At number 64 on the iconic 100 list is the 1960 Hemmets Cassius Clay Muhammad Ali card, one of the most famous boxing cards of all time. And here to talk to us about it today is Ryan from Brooklyn Vintage Cards on Instagram. I know this is a particular favorite of yours, Ryan's. Can you teach us about this card?
Sure. Thanks, Adam. I love this card. I love Cassius Clay Muhammad Ali cards. Ali was a legend of not only sport, but culture, and people and society. And so for that reason, everything about him has remained iconic and part of, I think, the human cultural experience. So what we have in 1960, this is right after the Rome Olympics, so Summer Olympics in Rome, Italy. This guy from Kentucky wins the gold medal at 18 years old, and he becomes an international superstar overnight. 18-year-old American wins the light heavyweight boxing gold medal. And this company in Sweden called Hemmets, they publish a journal. They still publish it today, I think. And every once in a while, they collect a bunch of famous people, put them together and publish them as card type collectibles. 1960, they did an Olympic international athlete themes issue. And there were these 4-card panels, and the Cassius Clay card, he's still basically a teenager at this point, and he's printed on one of these 4-card panels. And the way you collected the card, you'd buy the whole binder. It was a red binder, had about 21 sheets in it. And over time, people realized, wow, there was a 1960 Cassius Clay card. And as you got into the 80s and 90s, more and more people started to find these in vintage dumps, and it started to become collectible. The way that it has been collected is you cut it out of the panel. It's much more valuable cut out of the panel than it has been inside of the 4-sheet panel. And there's some interesting choices people have to make when they trim it out, because the back is not perfectly aligned with the center and the front of the card. And so you sort of have to pick how wide you want your borders of this card to be. And so if you collected 10 PSA grades of this 1960 Hemmets Cassius Clay, you would find 10 different size cards, decided by the cutter. So that's interesting. Is this his rookie card? That is the question of all time. And that is where boxing collectors and Muhammad Ali collectors have their biggest fights. I don't think this is his rookie card, because it comes in a 4-sheet panel. I know some of your other top 100 cards include famous rookies, but on a card that has other players. And we always wonder, is that really a rookie? Does it detract from the value? And so that's interesting. It's on a 4-player panel. They're not boxers. They're other international stars. And the other piece of it, it's very thin. It's almost paper. Like, I've had a few of these. I had one of the panels once. It can be wrinkled. It's very easily subject to creasing. It does not feel like a card when you hold this. It feels like you cut it out of a semi-thick, glossy piece of paper. So is that a card? I don't think so. I also acknowledge, though, that this is a very valuable piece of memorabilia, both of Muhammad Ali and of boxing. So I think there are other 1960s Ali cards, particularly the 1965 Italian Lampo card, which is in a multiplayer set. It's a single card of him front and back. But this one has clearly drawn the collector's eye. You used to be able to get these for $50, $80 as recently as 2017. And now you couldn't touch it for that. And there's only one PSA 10. There's like 2 or 3 PSA 9s. The high grades of this thing are super collector cards, no question.
The fact that you bring up that graded piece right there at the end, it's super interesting, because the fact that there's such a low number of high graded copies, even though it came out of a magazine, I think is something that's persuasive to collectors. They see that low pop and they go for it. The other thing that I can see, that I can hear from your voice, is you're teaching me about this card. I didn't know a lot about this until we jumped on here. The thing that you're teaching me about this card right now is that not only is it rare, not only does it come from a magazine, this is earlier than those other recognizable cards. And so the fact
years earlier, there is a jump from 1960. There's one thing in 1962 which is really weird. That's like a tiny cut from the front of a magazine, but you really got to get to 1964 before you get a card.
People appreciate that earlier version, right? Even if it's paper thin, even if it's out of a magazine and cut out and all that other stuff, the fact that it's the first thing really matters. And we see this in collecting over and over and over again. The first set is it ends up being the most recognizable the vast majority of the time. And so people don't really usually recognize that as it's happening, but as the years pass, as we get a decade or two down the line, people look back and they go, oh, that's interesting.
This card will be higher on the list in 5 years, no question.
I love that take. Well, we certainly brought the right person here on today to talk about this card. Do you have any other thoughts that you want to mention?
None other than if you're not into boxing cards, they're worth checking out.
Very cool. Well, you had it at number 62 and it came up at 64. So you were pretty spot on with this one. Again, at number 64, the 1960 Hemmets Cassius Clay Muhammad Ali card. Tomorrow, I'll be back with another guest to talk about card number 63. And until then, happy collecting.